So Monday is the 50th anniversary of Loving versus Virginia. It's the inspiration of your book. Not everybody knows that 50 years ago it was illegal for people of two different races to marry in certain states, including Virginia, where this case originates. Can you just explain the history for us?
So at one time, as many as 41 states in this country told white people that they could not marry non-white people. And in Virginia, starting in the 1660s, for the next 300 years, they had such a ban. By the time Loving versus Virginia was decided in 1967, there were only 16 states left, most of them in the former Confederacy, that still were holding on to these laws. I didn't realize this, but the whole Jim Crow regime, the main organizing principle for the entire regime of Jim Crow was fear of black men having sex with white women. And that was the propaganda people used. If we allow people to sit next to each other on the bus, a black man will end up having sex with your daughter. You know, it was part of the hysteria they would whip up to get popular support for this very artificial regime.
I mean, they needed to kill a lot of people, right? Because there was the period that your grandfather was part of, the Reconstruction era.
My great-grandfather, yeah.
Great-grandfather, where there was a multiracial self-governance.
Right. I believe it was one of the first times in the history of the world where you had robust, biracial, multiracial democracy, where you had people of color and liberal whites, those who had loyalty to the Union, coming together in politics to run for office. And so you had blacks and whites serving in these legislatures. This idea of biracial democracy that might actually demand something of elites, tax them more, require more fairness for struggling people, that is what the plutocrats most feared, and that is why they doubled down on white supremacy. And immediately after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, they construct the stereotype of the black male sexual predator. And this is what lynching was based on. It was really fear of black men voting and running for office. But they used it, it's sort of like a race passion play, right? We have to protect Southern women. It was created for a political function 300 years ago, and it still has a political function, right? Wherever you see whiteness being trumpeted in American history, there's an economic story of some economic interest trying to separate dangerous, potentially insurgent white people from potential allies.
It was remarkable what they came up with to justify murder. The cartoons that were running in the Raleigh News and Observer of a giant vampire looming over the town and snatching up little white women in his talons. And on one wing it says Negro, and on the other wing it says rule. These are the political cartoons that were going out to instigate people to kill, to overthrow democratically elected white-black fusion governments.
So you go from being a slave society to a society where blacks are in office, in positions of power. And that was such a provocation for the white supremacists. It is as much a provocation as the idea of a black man inserting himself between a white woman's legs. They equate the two.
I'm trying to sort out if they just used the one in order to get to, basically, they wanted political power. They wanted to take away the rights of freedmen to vote, black men.
I think it was a ruse. It was a way to try to keep working class whites in the Democratic white supremacist column. But white supremacy was an organizing principle for like the next 100 years.
Why do you think it's important that each year when we reach an anniversary of the Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court decision, that there are people who get together of all races, and in so many cities? If you go to lovingday.org, you could probably find one where you are right now. And why is it important?
So I didn't think of it, but I think it's genius, because every June 12th it comes up. And it's a way of celebrating love And that's what my book does. It celebrates love, including just agape love, you know. And I have a favorite poem by Langston Hughes. It's really short. It's called Advice. And he says, "Folks, I'm telling you, birthing is hard and dying is mean, so get yourself some loving in between."
The point is,
the point is, it's a good way of helping those who are loving across lines to find community. And it's a good way of building acceptance for all kinds of families. And it's nice.